Hello and welcome to part 2 of my tutorial on Aseprite for beginners. Now when you first start Aseprite up, you will see something just like this. To start a new file, simply find the Aseprite logo and click New File. You will be presented with a dialog. It's pretty much self-explanatory, but I'll go through it. Size is always in pixels, width and height. Color mode, RGBA and grayscale, which we all know, and indexed is like paint by numbers. The background, transparent, white or black, and the advanced options are pixel ratio, which is your ordinary pixels, which is 1:1 ratio, your double wide pixels 2:1, which means 2 pixels wide, 1 pixel in height, and double high, which is 1:2, which is 1 pixel in width and 2 pixels in height. Usually we'll just start with RGBA and something like 32 by 32. Hit OK, and there we have our canvas. Now when you are first presented with this screen, you may be missing a few things that I find important. Firstly, the preview window. It is likely that you already have it visible, but just in case you do not, hit F7 to enable it. Alternatively, you can find a button in the bottom right corner that has a number ratio on it, usually 1:1. Click that and it will show the preview window. And the last method is to select the view drop down menu at the top, scroll down to preview and it will show the preview window. Next up is the colour wheel, which right now we do not have. To show the colour wheel instead of a shade and tint, simply click this little menu icon above the palette, scroll down and find RBG colour wheel. And finally, the colour dialog window. If you look below your shiny new RBG wheel, you will see two colours. The top colour is your primary left click, and the bottom colour is your secondary right click. If you click on the top colour, you are presented with a dialog where you can alter colour values. But if you move away, that dialog will be gone. To prevent this, when you open the dialog, click and drag, and it will stay on screen. Now that we have that out of the way, let's go over the rest of the UI. Fortunately, Aseprite has a very simple and easy UI. Don't let that fool you though, it's a very powerful program. Let's start with the tabs at the top. These are the files you currently have open. Here I have the home page, pumpkin, and sprite-0001, which is a file I just created. It's named sprite-0001 because I have not saved it yet. When I save it and choose a name, that tab name will change. Let's go to the home tab. As you can see, it takes me back to where I started when Aseprite loaded up. My pumpkin tab is work in progress for my Halloween spooky items tutorial, and back to my new tab, sprite-0001. Sometimes you might lose the home tab. To fix this, select view from the top, scroll down to home, and you have the tab back. Another thing you can do with these tabs is to drag them into the main window. This allows you to see more than one file at a time. This is very useful for loading references into Aseprite and having them in a second window. You can put them one above the other, side by side. Which brings me to something else I find useful. You can make your own preview windows. To do this, we need to duplicate the tab you are working on. You do that by pressing and holding Ctrl while dragging. This duplicates your tabs. You can then position them next to your window. Now you can zoom in on one by 100% and on the other by 200%. Resize them, and it can even clean up some space for you to get rid of the original preview window. Pretty neat, huh? Let's talk about the palette. When you first start a new canvas, you will have the default palette. You can delete colours and create your own if you wish. Just drag and select the colours and hit delete. To add colours to your palette, select the colour you want. Once you have your colour, you can add it to the palette by clicking the little exclamation mark below the RBG wheel, next to the colour you want. If there is no exclamation mark there, that means that the colour is already in your palette. If you have a colour in your palette that you would like to change without deleting it, select the colour and click the little padlock icon just above the palette. Now while you have a colour selected, it will change when you change your primary colour. Once you are done, simply lock it again. You can arrange your colours by selecting them. Once they are selected, you will see a yellow border around the selected colour. When you hover over this border, your cursor will change. Click and drag then to move that colour. If you want to create a gradient between two colours, Aseprite has a feature that will allow you to do this quickly. First, create a gap between the colours you want. This is only necessary if you want to keep the colours between them. To create a gap, move the colours to the end of the palette. I'm going to create a gradient between three colours here, green, blue and yellow. To create space, simply drag a colour into the open area of the palette window. Now that we have space, click and drag from one colour to the other. This will create a selection box. Now hit the down arrow icon above the palette next to the padlock and select the gradient. This will create your gradient. As well as the gradient feature, using the same menu, you have the option to sort your colours by different methods. Hue, saturation, brightness, luminous, red, green, blue, alpha. Ascending, descending, you can even reverse your colours. If you're not comfortable with making your own palette, Aseprite comes with some built-in palettes that you can also use. To choose a palette, click the folder icon next to the down arrow above the palette. This will bring up a big selection of palettes that come packaged with Aseprite. There are many popular palettes in here. A simple yet popular one is the Gameboy Palette. Once you select it, click load and then click anywhere off that dialog to close it. The final drop down menu above the palette has a bunch of options for you to explore. Mostly visual changes, but there are some more interesting. For example, right at the bottom is create palette from current sprite. If you click that, you'll be presented with a dialog. Now there are a few options here that are very useful. Create a new palette with a specific number of colours or less. You can usually just leave that. Replace current palette, 54 colours. Pretty much the same as setting this number as the number of current colours. Create entries with alpha component. Now this is usually checked. I uncheck this because I use this quite a lot to take away the transparency colours in animations. So I'm just going to uncheck that for now and hit OK. And now you can see we have a new palette that contains all the colours from this image. Another sweet little nifty thing you can do is select your colours from the palette, hit Ctrl and C to copy, load up another image, hit Ctrl V, and now you have the palette from the pumpkin. Another way of doing this is to open up the final menu again and scroll down to load palette, and from this dialog you can load up a palette from any Aseprite file. So next up, I want to go over the tools. I'm not going to go into detail with these tools, I'm just going to go over the toolbar real quick. In a later video I will go over how to use these tools and some little nifty tricks for each and every one of them. So the toolbar can be found on the far right hand side. Starts off with the marquee. When you click them, it will bring out a menu of other options for that specific tool. Next down you have the pencil tool. Is also the spray tool. You have the eraser, you have the eyedropper tool, the magnifying tool, also the hand tool, the move tool and the slice tool, the paint bucket and the paint gradient tool, the line tool and the curve tool, the rectangle tool, the fill rectangle, the ellipse tool and the fill ellipse tool, the contour tool, the polygon tool, and finally, two interesting tools, the blur tool and the jumble tool. The jumble tool is quite fun. Whee! That's enough of that. Anywho, let's move on. Down below everything, we have our animation, our timeline. Here you will also see your layers, create many new layers. You can create new groups, you can organize your layers into groups. You can and should keep this very organized. Again, I don't want to go into details in this video about animation and the timeline, as I will be covering it thoroughly in another video. And up here, above the main window, we have the tool settings. For the pencil tool, we have brush type, brush size, we have ink settings. I won't go into detail with these as I'll be covering them later on when I go over tools. We have pixel perfect, which is the difference here. When I paint, you can see the lines are all not pixel perfect, which is exactly why it's called pixel perfect. When we enable this, we get a different image. Next up, I have Asymmetry Options, horizontal symmetry and vertical symmetry, or both. That is all for this video. If there is anything you feel I have missed, or anything in a future video that you would like to see, please leave a comment below. Meanwhile, hit subscribe, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.